Welcome back. Turning now to two fast-developing stories on Capitol Hill. In the House, the chamber's back in session today, and it appears to be no closer to averting a government shutdown than when it left before the weekend. Speaker Kevin McCarthy is planning procedural votes on 4 spending bills tonight, but no real indication they have the votes to pass. And even if they do, they'll be DOA in the Democratic-controlled Senate. Now, McCarthy tried to deflect questions from reporters today about the path forward as he attempts to frame the funding fight around pretty much the only thing his caucus can agree upon right now, the border. Take a listen.
The Republicans will put on the floor a rule to secure our border. I think that's the appropriate way to be able to keep government funding, secure our border, while we continue to keep government open to work on the rest of the appropriation bills. The president has ignored this problem. The president can no longer ignore what is happening on the border.
Now, asked again about funding the government, McCarthy tried to put the onus on President Biden, saying he wants to meet with the president on the border.
I will continue to move through our approach bills. We're getting ours done, send them over to the Senate. But I think the best way here is for the president to acknowledge the problem that he created on the border.
Are you asking for a meeting with the president to solve this issue?
I think it would be very important to have a meeting with the president.
Are you willing to shut down the government if you do not get border security a deal that you are having?
Let's be very clear. It would not be on us.
Now, remember, Speaker McCarthy cut a deal to avert a debt default in April and then has now blown it up with pressure from conservatives. And with no clear path forward for McCarthy, the government will shut down on midnight Saturday. Meanwhile, over in the Senate, the floodgates appear to have opened on embattled Democratic Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey after being indicted on bribery charges. It's approaching 20 of his Democratic colleagues in the Senate that are now calling on him to resign, including his fellow New Jersey Senator and longtime ally, Cory Booker. Booker putting out a statement that read in part, the details of the allegations against Senator Menendez are of such a nature that the faith and trust of New Jerseyans, as well as those he must work with in order to be effective, have been shaken to the core. I believe stepping down is best for those that Senator Menendez has spent his life serving. And joining me now with the latest on this from Capitol Hill is my NBC News colleague, Sahil Kapoor. So, Sahil, we heard a lot from the speaker today. I think he was in front of the media 3 different times. He basically said the same thing all 3 times. Are we getting any insight into whether or not he's making progress to get through this logjam? And what about this idea of conferencing with President Biden? Is there any real merit to that?
Yeah, there's no indication that the White House is going to take up Speaker McCarthy on a potential meeting between the president and the speaker. The White House's attitude is that they cut a deal with Speaker McCarthy several months ago on a 2-year budget deal, and McCarthy reneged on that. But the speaker's situation right now in the House of Representatives, it's a bit of a mess, Ryan. There are 4 days to go until a government shutdown, and what McCarthy is trying to navigate is a Republican division over messaging bills, appropriations bills that are never going to become law anyway, that these same far-right members have that have pushed him to renege on that budget deal, are pushing him to cut spending quite substantially in a way that he's struggling to get through the House of Representatives, and certainly, as you point out, has no shot in the Senate. Even if he does succeed at passing these appropriations bills, it's not going to avert a shutdown. Those bills are not going to become law. And McCarthy did indicate that he does want to put a short-term funding bill on the floor of the House this week for a vote. That actually would avert a shutdown, but it's not really clear what would be in it. He wants to put border measures in it. The White House says it's interested in additional resources to combat these additional migrants and asylum seekers at the border. They're not interested in controversial or partisan immigration policy changes on that front, and that's where the jam is. Now, McCarthy is also deflecting questions about where things stand in terms of the Senate sending over a short-term funding bill. The Senate has not yet passed one. They've been sluggish as well, but they're expected to release one as early as today, a short-term funding bill that could keep the government open if it were to pass. McCarthy was asked about that. Let's play a little bit of what he had to say. We'll talk about it on the other side.
How many times you've asked me a question this week, and it's the exact same question. It's always a hypothetical that the Senate is going to do something. I'm not going to take up hypotheticals of someday dreaming the Senate's going to do something. When they do something, come back and ask me about something.
So McCarthy, a little bit testy there, as you can see. The next step here in terms of pressuring him might be for the Senate to pass something, put it on his desk, and drive that contrast, say it's this or the government shuts down.
Yeah, he certainly does appear to be daring them to do so. So we'll see what his move is if and when that happens. Let's talk about the other big controversy on Capitol Hill, where we talked about the floodgates opening now in the Senate. More and more Democrats calling on Bob Menendez to resign. What can you tell us about who is calling on him to step down versus who is not?
Yeah, that's right, Ryan. The dam has broken. The floodgates have opened. Pick your analogy here. More and more Democratic senators are calling on Bob Menendez to resign after the jarring allegations in this federal indictment. The most notable one is New Jersey's other Democratic senator, Cory Booker. Now, what all Democrats agree on is that he has a presumption of innocence until proven guilty, like any other American in the justice system. What they also say is he doesn't have a constitutional right to continue being a senator while he's fighting these very serious charges if he doesn't have the trust of his constituents. A number of Democratic senators have come out for him to resign, including Booker, including multiple red state Democrats who are facing re-election in 2024. An interesting little glimpse of the politics. They don't want to have that muddy the waters as to them running as the party of government, trying to run as the party of good government against the Republicans. That includes Sherrod Brown in Ohio, John Tester in Montana. A couple of people we haven't heard from, Ryan, most notably Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. He said that Menendez is going to step off his position as chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, has not called on him to resign. Another person who has not called on Menendez to resign, President Joe Biden, whose Justice Department, of course, issued that indictment.
Right. And our text chain is thriving again. Sahil, Liz Brown Kaiser informing all of us that work on Capitol Hill that Gary Peters is calling for Bob Menendez to resign. He, of course, significant because he chairs their campaign committee. All right, Sahil Kapoor, thank you so much. We appreciate that.
RSV is out there,